Guys, stop apologizing for being proud of yourself. Sometimes people that talk to me, they'll be like, oh my God, they'll be like, I'm sorry, man. I feel like I'm just talking about myself. I'm like, hey man, listen, it's okay to believe in yourself around me, buddy. Okay? You're giving me hope. When good shit happens to people, I get hopeful. Cause that's the positive about being selfish.
Welcome to FredTalk, where if you're not learning, hopefully you're laughing.
Big kid energy. Welcome to FredTalk podcast. I'm your host, Freddie Valoy. Welcome, guys. Listen, that big kid energy I hit is very important to me. What does that mean? That just means that you're doing the things you got to do in life, or you're trying very hard. You're doing the work, but you're remembering to have fun. Because I think having fun is a part of doing the work, but I think we forget that, especially in American society. You know, the hustle and bustle and accomplishments and getting it done and grinding. We're all about that, but at the end of the day, you got to have that balance, right? Because at the end of the day, what's the point of doing all this work if you're not happy? Right? Isn't that the ultimate thing? You want to be happy. You want to be fulfilled. You want to have this sense of like, when you think of your life, you're like, fuck yeah, I did it. I lived. I overcame the odds. I did the right thing. You know, you want to look back with sane mind and be like, I'm doing it. All right. And today's guest is a shining example of that. This is like instantly a classic FredTalk episode, I think. At the end, I found out she was a philosophy major, and I was like, okay, that makes total sense. Guys, we go deep on this one, baby. We put on the fucking scuba gear, and we're going interdimensional motherfucking we out here, B. You know what I'm saying? They're like, what does that mean? That's just gibberish. Today we have on Liz Prakash, and she is going through her life story and her journey, and we get into the whole like inner child thing, the whole overachievers. And, you know, when you're overachieving as a means to kind of distract yourself from the work you need to do. And then the inevitable moment when the work comes up that you have to do for you to progress in life and what that's like. She's very introspective, so she gives good detail on what she's going through, how she was feeling at the moment. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. Please reach out to Liz if you have any questions. If you have any questions for me, obviously hit me up on Instagram, Freddie Valoy. Guys, I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review, and to please share my stuff with your friends, guys. We are out here doing the damn thing. So without any further ado, guys, please give it up for Liz Prakash. Yay. All right, Liz, a.k.a. Brown Chick.
What a do, Freddie.
Yeah, I'm glad we set this up super quick. Didn't let my ADHD kick in. You know, you responded to one of my Instagram stories, and we talked about self-aware extroverts, and I feel like we're in the same ballpark with that. And you had mentioned that you've been reparenting yourself now, today, and I really want to get into that. So, what does reparenting mean to you?
Reparenting to me. So let's start with, I have a 4-year-old, and there are certain things that I do specifically that I don't want my child to do. And then I'm like, well, how can that happen? For example, I give. We were talking about boundaries, right? And so I feel like as an extrovert, sometimes who's also empathetic, I don't have boundaries. I'm always there to give for other people. I'm there for other people. I'm there to internalize what they're going through, what they're feeling, what they're just anything that they might be going through in life. But then I don't know where that boundary is for me, where my cup starts to become empty. And that's something that I need to bring awareness for myself, because at the end of the day, that cup is gone to someone else who's not refilling it for me, or is there for me, and I can't give myself anything, or the most important person, my child, right? And so boundaries can be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to come from my example of being an empath, or a serial empath, as my friends call me. And so for my little one, I want him to learn, like, it's okay to say no and not feel bad about it. It's okay to say, hey, I'm not digging this. I'm not wanting to do this, and feel like I don't need to say yes just to gain acceptance or gain, this idea of not missing out. And where does that start with? It starts from examples. I can't just necessarily tell him, hey, have boundaries, have this, have that. It's not going to be instilled in him unless I'm showing him daily examples. It's not about the words, it's about the actions, right? And so reparenting to me is, for the first time, acknowledging that there's an inner child in me that I never necessarily had awareness of, because it was survival for me, right, growing up. And so now at 31, it's like, oh, hey, Liz, it's okay. And,
you're mentioning the inner child, and you're hitting me right in the therapy right now. And I love it. This is what I go, talk about in therapy, or early on in therapy. Now it's shifting over more with her into like performance coaching and stuff like that. But I want to talk about the boundary setting. You're working on saying no to people. When was the last time you said no to someone?
When's the last time I said no to someone? This is a work in progress.
I know.
When did I say no? The other night, at the end of the day, it was like, I had been in cases all day. I didn't have my little one. I finished working out, and then someone asked me, hey, let's go get a drink. But that person usually only wants to get a drink when they want to vent.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Right. So
are they like venting about a relationship or something like that?
Things that they could literally change. These things don't need to be vented about, because they're actual things that could be changed, like patterns and habits that just, if you don't like it, don't do it. It's very simple.
This is interesting, because there are people, I'm just going to call it for simplicity's sake, like in the tree of life, there's these people in the tree that they like a homing signal for people that want to vent. And in your case, a lot of times it comes across for people in relationships. Like they're in that cycle of relationships where they like love their partner, and then they're like, get honest with themselves and understand that they don't need to be in the relationship, things like that. And then they go to those people, those friends, to vent to them, draining that friend, that empath, and that friend gets emotionally invested. And when you give them the advice of like, you need to leave this person, find a way to take care of yourself, blah, 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 blah. Then 2 weeks later, you found out, oh no, everything's good. I'm back with and it's like, you just told me you wanted to leave him, and now I'm invested. It's it's inconsiderate, I think, to people with, it's super, super inconsiderate. And then you mentioned your survival from growing up. What was that like for your childhood? What was survival like in your childhood?
Well, real quick, going back to what you just said, the homing signal, I think for you and I both, time is very important, right? And so one of my biggest pet peeves is repeating myself. And I feel like when we're having these conversations and you're asking me for advice, and I'm not necessarily giving you advice, I'm there to listen and I'm emotionally invested and whatever. It's like some people just want that affirmation or that justification that, oh, like, listen to me, this is what I'm going through. It doesn't necessarily have to be about, it could be about jobs. It could be about how they're responding to certain situations. But it's like, if you have awareness enough to talk about it and continue talking about it, then change it. So that was the earliest time, or the latest, where I said no was, hey, look, I'm drained at the end of the day. I need to take a moment. I just had a really good lift. I'm done for the day.
Yeah.
So did it feel unnatural for me? Yes, because usually it's like, oh shit, someone's going through something. I know what it's like for some people not to be there for me growing up. So now it's like this way that I fill a void, right? So going into your next question about my childhood. So it's like this innate feeling of filling a void because no one was there for me in my life. So now I feel like I don't want anyone to feel alone. So, And so then, but I need to take a step back and be like, I can be there for people without giving my entirety. And then at the end of the day, not having enough for myself.
Yeah, I feel you there. And when you say nobody was there for you, because if I remember correctly, because we met a few years ago, were you born in India and then moved to the state? Well, explain that, because I believe you had to take care of your grandmother at some point or something like that. Like,
right. So I was born in India. My dad passed away from hemophilia when I was right before 2. I thought that my biological mom was non-existent, but found her. So I'm 31 right now. So I found her when I was 28, going on 29. That is in and of itself a different podcast or it can be
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
incorporated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I mean, that is also a boundary that I've had to like establish really quickly. So yeah, so found her, but going back to the story of me, so it was just my grandmother and I. We moved to America when I was 7, lived with my uncle and his wife in a very physically abusive situation. And, just ever since I was, about 5, 6, things very quickly shifted for me. So it was always like survival at that point because I didn't have a moment to be a child. And now that I have a child, I realize how important play is and how important it is to be a child. And, in my 20s, mid 20s, early 20s, late 20s, even, friends would say, Liz, you just got to be your age. And I never really understood that until now. And it's because at 5, I was 12, right? Because that was what my survival instincts needed to be. It was always, we don't necessarily have these, we don't know if we're highly driven or successful at that age, right? But we have some kind of inclination of, okay, this child is more focused. This child is all over the fucking place. I think for me, I was a very focused child. And so when hit with adversity and difficulty, that's when I started to hit this like flight or fight sense. And it was fight. I thought through everything. I just stayed super positive and was like, oh, then this like phrase started happening in my mindset of, well, that's just life. We keep going, that's just life. That was my way of like justifying things as, oh, well, that's just life. I wouldn't take a moment to say, okay, well, that hurt my feelings or that was unfair. And sometimes you need that. And that is where I'm reparenting myself to be like, okay, it's okay to not feel okay. So for me, that survival instinct from 5, 6 on was, oh shit, this is something that's difficult. This is something that's not, let's just use the word fair or stressful. Stress is a good word. So it was a stressful situation. And I would just barrel through it. Like, how do I fix it? And so now that's what I do with things is like, with work, right? So if there's something that's going on, I stay super calm and positive and just barrel through. But there's a sense of it's almost negative doing that, right? Because, but we can get into that so finishing up where I was, so physically abusive situation. Then I became undocumented because people were just assholes in my life and, weren't there to help. And I mean, I came here legally. So, then
what do you mean? How did you become undocumented? If you were, I'm uneducated on this topic. So
just with like the people who were my guardians at that point who didn't file the right stuff and didn't take care of the documentation. So things were just fucking lost. So here's a prime example of how my personality then now really started to develop is at 17 here, I'm going to college. Well, what the fuck? Why don't I have a social security number? Why can I not do these things? I'm more fucking American than Johnny Appleseed. Like really, I'm faux brown at this point. So with that being said, instead of being down about it and be like, I can't do this. I don't have any family to help me. How am I going to pay for school? Where am I going to live? What I did was I sat and I literally wrote a letter to almost every congressman that I knew, almost every just senator, lawyers, everyone that would just be of help or give me advice. I just started writing letters. Now, there's a different side of that. There's a state of fear, like, oh shit, I'm undocumented. What would happen? Because it's not like I came here illegally, but where would I go since I am now, undocumented, what would happen to me if now I'm on the radar? Those are like significant thoughts that people in my situation when I was in that situation would have, but I wouldn't think of those things. It's like this sense of risk is really not there for me, right? Whenever you go through so much trauma and you're always in the survival mode, it's the same thing as like entrepreneurs, right? We have this prolific sense of risk is just bullshit. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Right?
Risk is fun. Risk is fun.
Like risk is it's like an arm and a leg to life, right?
Yeah.
So, but you don't necessarily, that's not your first thought. It's more so just like getting through it. And how do I get through it? What are the next steps? How do I get to the next level where I'm okay or closer to being okay? So, I fought through it, and I had an amazing lawyer that took my case pro bono and was able to help me. He was actually the lawyer that was right hand to Obama for immigration. So it was very blessed on that sense to have someone to hear me out. But there are not a lot of people that see a traumatic situation, right, and barrel forward. So that's a prime example of how I just stay positive and be like, okay, well, I never took the moment to be like, what the hell? Like, this is not fair. Why am I having to do something? It's not fair that, my guardians didn't take the appropriate steps. I never took that moment to do it. And so that's what I'm getting at, is sometimes we need to take that moment to feel like something is not okay, because it comes up later. When you stay positive so much, it's okay not to be positive on a bad day.
Yeah. Definitely comes up later, especially when you barrel through and you're positive. I talked about this earlier on in my podcast where, my depression and anxiety really came in my, late 20s, early 30s. And it was like, after I achieved the things I thought I wanted to accomplish, my brain was like, okay, cool, you're done. And then it just started unloading these banker's boxes of shit. Oh, you forgot to deal with this stuff too. Yeah, we didn't forget about it. Like it's like that. And then you're like, what the fuck? Like, I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to do. Like,
but I think that's from staying positive. I mean, yours and my personality is very much alike, right? And so that's why we got along. And it's like, wait, there's nothing wrong with it. There's two sides to this. We can either be super negative and just focus on, well, shit, this is unfair. Why did my life turn out this way? Why did these unjust things happen? But we didn't do that. We chose to just be like, okay, well, fuck it. I'm going to keep on going. I love life. Birds are singing, sky is blue, trees are green, grass is green. I'm good. Right. But it's important to incorporate a little bit of that into your positive sense. And these banker's boxes, like you said, they're like the moving pods that are just coming through and just being dumped on my front lawn. And I'm like, I didn't realize I was emotional hoarder over here.
Hey, I'm gonna change my analogy to the moving pods, because those are way bigger and they make more sense than little cardboard boxes of the
and I'm just like sitting here with my tea in the morning, just watching the shit be like dumped off in front of my yard, and I'm like, what is happening? I mean, did I, like, my storage unit, like, did I forget to pay for it or something? No.
They should do an Inside Out like that. That movie Inside Out was great. It would be cool to do like an adult version of, have a couple different characters, and one of them's like the ultra positive person that hits them later. That would be freaking great. Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm literally, whenever like children, you're just like watching a train wreck happen. That's what I'm watching. It's like, wait, who is this person? What am I going through? And it's like really, I've never felt anxiety in my entire life. And honestly, even though I just explained a little bit about my childhood, I never really focused on stress. So I can't necessarily tell you that when a stressful situation happens and someone says, "Are you stressed?" I can't answer it as yes, I am. I say like, no, I need to figure out what the next steps are. I'm a list person, right? So it's like, how do I get through it? But now with, this is what we were talking about yesterday, was highly driven people who keep barreling forward, and we have so many responsibilities in our lives, and we have so many ambitions as well, and expectations of ourselves. Not necessarily, we're not ever comparing ourselves to others, we're comparing ourselves to ourselves. And it's like, that is one level. Then the next level for me is like having a child and making sure that I'm giving him everything that he has, so that he's not going through the same things that I went through in life. Not that he ever will, but we all have different varying senses of trauma. And I don't want him to pick up a lot of the things that I'm working through, because a lot of my disassociative, or let's say toxic qualities towards myself, they were developed from a survival mode. That is different than cultivating it from example. I don't want him to become the cynical asshole when he's, our age, and he's just like that because, oh, well, mom was like that, right? So not that I'm saying that that's happening, but so that's the next level of it. And then, career, and then starting a business. And just then on top of it all, I realized, I need to go to therapy. And so with therapy, it's like bringing up, again, I think my therapist is the one that like canceled my subscription at the storage warehouse, and everything is just being like shipped over. So when you put all of that together into one big circle, this sense of anxiety is like, well, fuck, this is heavy. Like, I'm so used to barreling forward. Right now, I can't barrel forward. And with therapy, it makes you sit in that moment, right?
Yes.
And that's different.
So my therapist does this thing with me frequently. When she, I'll quick answer. She goes, no. She goes, don't do it from here, not from your head. She goes, feel your body. And then like within like 2 seconds, it's like, I can feel like, oh shit. Like, and then explaining those feelings. Like at the end of therapy, a lot of times at the beginning, mostly, I was exhausted. At the end, I'm like, holy shit, I'm like tired. I felt like I just did some type of workout. It's hard to explain because I never felt that. But I was like, oh, I was just paying attention to my feelings and not avoiding them or pushing them down, because I was trying to be like, what's the positive thing to do? What's the positive way to think about it? It's like connecting your brain and your brain and your body.
Well, you think about it. I mean, and you can understand it because, we're both in spine. Our brains are like a processor. It's continuously scanning, right? Scanning our body. And sometimes when we are in this like survival mode, we stop connecting our brain and our body, and we're just continuously just going forward, right? And so if we take that moment, and that's what I've really been doing, is taking that moment. Am I breathing from my chest or am I breathing from my stomach? And, our background of going to yoga, that is a huge thing. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm breathing from my chest. Like, where did I become? And so then redirecting that through a big belly breathing. And then I'm like, oh shit, my hands are sweating. My back is sweating. Like, what the hell is happening? Right. And so then at that moment, I feel that anxiety happening, but now I have to like stop and be like, what do I need right now? What do I need for myself right now? And why is this happening? And you're absolutely right. It's like this, when we're so positive and so driven, we disassociate how our brain and our bodies are connected. And when there's a moment where you can't, they're always connected, but then there's a moment where it's forced to connect, and forced for us to have awareness of it. And since we're not used to dealing with things in that sense of being in the moment, being present, it's overwhelming. And that's where that anxiety comes from, is like, I've gone 31 years not knowing what anger is, or like, you know, or sadness or fear or whatever, because I've chosen not to stay in those moments.
Yeah.
But now I'm feeling like, what is anger? Now I'm fucking pissed. And I want to, you know, take my fist through a wall. Not that I'm saying I am, but you know what I mean? Now it's like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn those emotions rather than just feeling alone like I have all my life, but also staying happy. There are other emotions. So you're right. Having a movie outside in might be the best thing because yeah. So going back to your question of what does reparenting look like, and just saying that, it's understanding that there are other emotions other than just surviving.
Oof.
And sometimes
that's powerful.
And sometimes I think the only emotion I've known is survive. And it's tough because, you know, I've had to have those conversations with little Liz and be like, hey, I hear you, I feel you, and I love you. And those were hard for me to do because I didn't know who that person was. Because the person I am today, I mean, what is that saying? It's like we're collectively always a child. We are every age all at once at the present. And so all the things that we didn't feel when we're 7, 8, 9, we're still going to feel them today. It's just whether we choose to or not. And it's hard because like I'm now actively feeling those things that I never thought that I would feel. And it's like this emptiness and loneliness on a different spectrum and a different amplified sense of like, oh my gosh, how did I get to this point? But then also I need to take a moment to be like, fuck, Liz, you're pretty badass that you could have taken a different route in all of this, but you didn't. Like, you are where you are. And, you know, 31 with this amazing baby, a great career.
Yeah.
I'm still positive. I'm not a cynical bastard.
No,
you
great
know?
personality. You're awesome.
And so, well, thanks. But, you know, I have to say, like, the opposite side, I could have been pregnant at like 15 and, you know, shooting up at 17. I'm just saying, like, that is the other extreme, which is what I feel like a lot of people who go through a lot of emotional distress and like abuse and not having a family home, it's easy to do that because that's all that's available. Right.
Yeah. And that brings some type of feeling, you know, getting into high risk activities, doing drugs. Like you were primed to really go, I feel like, a different way, like that, or being freaking kidnapped and sex trafficked, some crazy shit like that. And like, for what the cards you were dealt, you're way up, I feel like. And the self-awareness that you have right now at 31 with, you know, working on your inner child and all that, I think, you know, in my unprofessional opinion, I think you're doing an amazing job. What's your what's your relationship? Explain your relationship right now with your personal inner child. I want to get into a little bit of that.
So with the sense, you know, self-worth comes from how your parents make you feel from a very young age. There's this, I do a lot of just reading when it comes to our brain and like neurologically why we are the way we are. And we're super receptive up until the age of 4. So the person that we are now is really constituted by what we were privy to from 0 to 4. And so that has to come from who we're around, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know what that looked like, but I know from 4 on, it was this, like I said, the survival instinct. So there was never a moment to learn what self-worth was, right? And it wasn't even like a muscle that was there for me to think of. It was just like I found the sense of accomplishment when I did something, when I finished a task. But then it would be like, oh, great job, Liz, and keep going. But self-worth also comes from those boundaries and things like that. And it's all interconnected. So My relationship right now with little Liz is we're speed dating. We're
Ooh,
speed
explain that.
dating. We're speed dating, but no one else is around, right? So we have little moments of time allotted with each other where we're just, it's not small talk, but it's, hey, I hear you and I see you, or I feel you. I'm trying to understand you. And
How does, sorry to interrupt, how does little Liz feel in those moments, or in that moment you just explained?
scared, really scared. But at the same time, it's nice to feel not alone. It's a weird thing to say, but like,
Yeah, no, I just got chills. Yeah.
I've always felt alone my entire life. And little Liz now, because I'm acknowledging her, I'm giving her that sense from myself, that she's not alone. And that is an overwhelming feeling, but not in a bad way. It's an overwhelming feeling in a good way, because that's like a warmth that's never been there. And that's scary. Saying the word scary, so I need to break that down. It's scary because I'm so used to not feeling these feelings, right? So adult Liz doesn't want to go through it, but knows she has to. The little Liz, all she wants is to be loved and told that she's okay. So it's like these two different opposing factors coming at each other, right? But it's going to have to take me saying, I need to be scared and be okay to feel these things, so that little Liz is no longer scared. And that we will both be okay in the long run going forward. If that makes sense.
It does. I mean, I could tell you're doing the work. Like, this is, I really appreciate you sharing all this. This is like some real deep shit. Like,
it's
so
tough. I mean, like there are days where I'll just be driving and I'm like crying. I'm like, what's happening? I don't cry very much. Like to even say this, I didn't cry when my mom died, because and that's something that we talked about in therapy is, from a very young age, she was, when I was 2 is when I came into her life, or she started becoming my guardian, and she was 72. And so with that being said,
and that's your grandmother that became your guardian, correct?
Right. So my grandmother. Yes. And so I call her mom. And so what happened was, in my mind, I always started seeing her as like, well, she's old. Everyone else in my life has died. So that's going to happen. So like 5, 6, 7, that started becoming a mind thought, like this thought, like, oh, okay, I'm just destined to be alone my entire life. And so that was a survival tactic of, I accepted it. And so when she passed away when I was 26, I mean, yeah, it was sad, or, it was like, oh shit, but I knew it was going to happen, because it was like that rational part of my brain that said, well, she was old and this is what happens in life. Like, I always have a justification, a very rational justification for things. And sometimes I need to stop doing that and be like, well, it's not fair. Like, I lost my mom. I need to just be in my feelings sometimes. And I don't know how to do that. It's like, oh, well, these are the biological process of life. We are born, everything is like very sequential for me in how I think. And sometimes need to stop doing that. But again, so someone called me an overthinker the other day, and I was there. He's been calling me that. And I don't know if I take offense to that. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think I overthink not because I'm a neurotic, batshit crazy asshole. I think I overthink because that is part of surviving, right? Like, I have to always think 5 steps ahead. And you think about what we do. being inspiring, we think about 5 different things that can go wrong and how we can respond to those 5 things 5 different ways, and how a surgeon's going to respond to those 5 things. And so it's like, it's not overthinking because I have nothing else to do. There's a difference. I'm overthinking because I just want to make sure that I've got my ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the work, but it's hard.
It's very hard. I think you're a shining example of, I mean, literally in the middle of doing the work. And so your mom dies at 26. At 28, your biological mom enters the picture. Just broad overview. We don't have to get too deep. We can literally save that for another pod. But how, I mean, relatively speaking, it's like the lake was flat, and then somebody threw a boulder in it. It's what it seems like relative to, I know, because that's like, it's adding to that. That's a big addition to the mix you got here.
Like a lake, and then you don't realize the lake is on top of a geyser, and the geyser just squirted all over the entire fucking world.
Dude,
that's what it is.
I'm gonna come to you for my analogies from now.
Seriously.
So what does that feel like?
So this is one of those things, is boundaries, and like learning to not be as empathetic, right? Because when I first met her, and I'm sure she'll hear this, and I'm sure her feelings will get hurt, but you know what? Sometimes it's okay, because my feelings matter too. Yeah. And so when I found her on my own. Here, you have to understand, like, I only knew her first name. I have 2 siblings, half siblings, older than me. So I'm 31, and I think they're like 6 or 7, 8 years older than me, or 8 and 9 years older than me. Half siblings. So I only knew all of their first names. Now, my name is very different because we had a different dad, and Liz Prakash. There's not many Prakashes out like there with the Catholic first names. So I was like, okay, how am I going to find them? But this day in social media, I had a childhood friend reach out to me on Instagram. And then I started to, being a creep and looking through her pictures and all that. And so I was like, oh, well, there's 3 very specific names that are not Indian names. Now, what are the chances? Like, we all have Catholic, like, biblical names. And so it's like, oh, well, So I reached out, drank a bottle of bourbon, reached out.
Like a true Kentucky girl.
Absolutely. And I got a hit. And I guess the middle daughter, so if you consider me the youngest, she was like, well, how do I know that you're you? I was like, excuse me?
Yeah.
But you have to understand, they were old enough and everything, so they knew my name, my first, last name. They knew where I've been. They knew everything about me. I knew nothing about them. So it took me by surprise, because here I was excited, like that little child who's been wanting a mom came out like, oh, hey, you're a sibling. Like, I'm super excited. And that extroverted me is like, oh, let me just dump my entire like investment into you, right? Yep. And then all of a sudden the conversation started to shift, and it was like, well, I'm going to introduce you to our mom, but you have to be pretty gentle. I'm like, gentle? What are you talking about? Y'all made the decision to not be in my life. It wasn't the other way around. And so then it was like, I talked to my biological mom, and it was like such a weird conversation. It was now me being that empath, like understanding what she was going through. But then not once was I asked, like, or said, hey, I'm sorry that, I didn't reach out to you. And their explanation was, well, we closed that chapter in our life. And I was like,
oh, I'm sorry.
So this is where I'm learning is, before, if someone said I'm sorry, I'd be like, well, that's life. But now I'm learning how to say, you're right. Like, that's pretty fucked up. Like, I have a child. I can't go an hour without checking the Nest Cam, right? Like, so that's my baseline. And then she was explaining, well, your father was abusive. And I'm thinking, well, you know what? I'm not in an abusive, like physically abusive marriage or anything like that. So I can't understand. And this is India. Like, I'm starting to make these like justifications and excuses for someone that I don't need to do that for. And I did that for 28, 29. So the first 2 years. And when I hit 30, I was like, you know what? You have a grandchild here. And, you know, it's great that you reach out every so often and say happy birthday and, you know, happy Women's Day, Empowerment Day. Well, I mean, that really means jack shit to me other than, hey, how are you? If you don't have the self-awareness to say, hey, I'm sorry that I wasn't in your life, because then I started to think, well, okay, abusive marriage or not, dad died 2 years later. Apparently you lived 2 doors down from me, but you closed that chapter.
Yeah.
So now little Liz has different feelings, right? Because now little Liz is what, like, pissed. Before, little Liz just was like, okay, well, I don't have a biological mom, but I had this amazing grandmother that raised me too. So that was never a void that I needed to fill. My grandmother gave me all of those things. But now all of a sudden, it was like, wait a minute. You live 2 doors down. You watched me grow up until I was 7. And then you just mentioned that you knew where I was when I was 15. You know, you could have reached out any time in this whole mix, but you chose not to. And you should close.
What was the reason for not reaching out later? Like even at like maybe 15, you know, things like that.
That was what she said, was she had closed that chapter.
Wow.
And I was like, how do you close a chapter that's your child? And because that's where I am a little apprehensive now to understanding, well, was it an abusive situation? Because usually if it was an abusive situation, that person's no longer. So go get your child, go get your baby.
Yeah.
And so again, like me saying all these things, this is new for me to be in my feelings and be like, this was not okay. And
yeah, it was not. Yeah, you're right.
Those first 2 years, you know, they were draining conversations because when I would talk to her, as infrequent as it would always be like, what was me? Like, well, this is what was happening to me. And I would listen and I'd be like, well, not once has she asked or tried to understand like what it was like for me, or put aside all of that and just be like, oh shit, I'm talking to my youngest child. Let me get to know her. Like, but there was no sense of that. And so, you know, that is one of my boundaries, is like when I am giving, I need to learn how to not give unless it's reciprocated by someone who also is giving me the same amount of respect and just friendship and loyalty as I'm giving them as well.
100%. And I'm interested to know what do you think? Because I like I said, I really do. I'd be hard pressed to find someone that I think is you're like at the top tier for me right now of like doing the work. And like, so what do you think the next part of your healing looks like? You know,
learning to be alone. And I think you can understand this as being an extrovert. We get our energy from being around people.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that I don't know how to just be like, I'm all, you know, if I'm not running trays early in the morning and then going into cases and coming back in time to get little one ready to go to school and then going back to cases and in between cases going and working out, like, this is nice. This is the first time I've actually sat down and just sat. And so my next step is to be okay in learning to meditate again, right? And just putting everything away and asking myself, what do I need in this moment right now? And just being quiet with my thoughts. And not necessarily meditation to find quietness, because I feel like I can do that.
Yeah.
But meditating to actually allow those thoughts to come up.
Yeah.
I don't do that. And so I would say continuing to go to therapy and continuing to go from speed dating Liz to maybe ask her if she'd like to go study.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's coming. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's good for you. That meditation part is important, because it sounds like my therapist, I tell her, meditate, and she goes, just try sitting. She goes, don't meditate. Don't focus on your breath. Just sit in a quiet room and just, like you said, Liz, allow the thoughts to come in. I was like, she goes, no, I think she could tell I was trying to find the way to she goes, no meditation, just sit. Yeah. And I felt uncomfortable, and I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable now as I'm saying it, but this is great. What kind of, what advice or message do you have for anybody listening to this that may be going through like a similar thing? So they're the self-aware extrovert. They've been barreling through, and they've hit a wall, and they're trying to push through, and they may not even feel like there's going to be an end in sight, kind of thing. So
again, those qualifiers, right, of being highly driven and an entrepreneur, those things you have to have those qualities of being positive, not being scared of risk, those are also very indicative of mental illnesses, right? People who are just adventurous and just go forward. And not that I'm saying there's a parallel, but I'm just saying it's easier for people who are highly successful. That's why they say CEOs are, they're higher in acquiring mental illnesses than anybody else, because of the responsibility and their need to continue to strive for greatness. And you lose yourself. You lose those precious moments of sitting down with your family and sitting down and having dinners and reconnecting with yourself. And, that is very important. And I see that from having my child. I posted this thing on Instagram about, and I've gotten a lot of shit from other parents about, oh, you co-parent, you attachment parent. But that's what, my baby is 4. He's sleeping in bed with me. I don't know if it's a brown thing, but it is. And I don't care what anyone says. He's sleeping in bed with me. We eat together. We watch TV together. We come down in chaos together. Togetherness. Yeah. That is important for me. And, I don't want to lose those moments, because I am now not working on myself and being overwhelmed with anxiety and then continuing to just barrel through. I don't want to do that. And I don't want him to pick up on those things. And now you and I are in our 60s having this conversation, and I'm on this podcast and Freddie, I fucked up. Now my child is doing this. And that's the last thing I want to do. And I think just having self-awareness and understanding my identity, right, has been, I can do it all. That's just the identity that I've acquired from a very young age, is I'm a survivor and I can do it, and I can do it all. Can't tell me nothing. Come at me. You can't tell me. Yeah. And for those people and those personalities, it's very hard to ask for help, because that takes away from that identity. Seeking help or seeking therapy is not something that is readily the first thing on our mind, because that is the stigma of, I look weak and I am taking away from this person that I am, who is strong and capable of going through hell and back. But even those people sometimes need it the most. And it's okay to be scared. It's okay to, but that is something I'm working on, is telling myself it's okay not to be okay. So
and people can go to therapy if they don't feel that things are even like, some people might not go, it's not that bad. And you'd be surprised. Like Rachel and I still go to couples therapy, not as frequently as we used to when we got back together after the breakup, but we still go. Like our last session was literally, we're like, what are we going to talk about? I was like, I don't know. Things are going good. We'll see. And we had a whole session on like life things moving forward. And it was super productive. It was freaking awesome. So like, I implore people that have been thinking about it and maybe they don't think that they're at the point. Like you don't need to be redlining to go to therapy. Liz, if people want to reach out to you and ask questions, is that okay if they do?
Absolutely. You know, that's the one thing about being an extrovert and also an empath is, you know, in my background is I'm a philosophy major too. So I believe that we are put on this world to do things, all things in kindness. And I'm not really finding any growth unless I'm helping someone. And that is honestly how I want my child to grow up too, is knowing that like if I'm contributing positively to someone else's life, then that's where I find my self-worth, right? We're all here on everybody's journey to help guide. And if they want to reach out, I'm more than happy to talk. But yeah, no, we should continue doing this. This is awesome.
Yo, this is so good. Like one of my main things I say is I like talking about the silly, goofiest shit in the world, idiotic things, or the depths of humanity. And you more than covered the depths of humanity today. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this story, Liz. You're a beautiful person. And I'm excited to have you back on to find out what else you uncover. I forgot that you were a philosophy major. So this is all really making sense now. So
maybe sometimes I'm maybe a little too highly self-aware. And so, and so I need to hone back on that, but that's overthinking, right? And see, it's all interconnected. And that's what I realized is, like I said, I called our brain a processor and we're just scanning. And I need to also do that emotionally. And it's okay. It's okay to be scared, but I know that without the work, it's only going to get worse. And I don't ever want to, I love people. I love life, right? And I don't ever want to become that cynical bastard that I was saying that I am not. And that's in and of, you know, my goal in life is never do that and always do things in love and kindness. So I can't do that for other people unless I'm doing it for myself, right?
Hell yeah. Liz, you're the fucking best. Thank you so much again. Where can people find you on Instagram?
I am at liz.clt.
Liz.clt. Guys, hit her up. I know sometimes people reach out to me, guys will reach out, girls for therapy. Maybe someone wants to reach out and they're more comfortable reaching out to a girl if it's a girl. So I'm glad that you opened that door for people. Guys, subscribe, rate, and review to FredTalk. Share my shit with your friends. When you share my stuff, it really helps. People show up to shows. People hit my Instagram account. We got some new international followers. We got one person from England. We got another person from Canada. We're growing out here. So, Liz, any last words before we go?
No, just keep it real.
Hell yeah. All right, guys. Bye.